From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Tuesday, July the 25th, 2017. The diplomatic crisis between Israel and Jordan has been resolved. The Jordanians last night agreed to release the Israeli security guard who shot a Jordanian terrorist, and Israel removed the metal detectors it installed at the Temple Mount. As we reported to you yesterday, tensions with Jordan were already high after Israel installed the metal detectors at the entrance to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem's Old City, following a terror attack on July the 14th, in which 2 Israeli police officers were murdered by 3 Arab-Israeli terrorists. Muslim leaders claimed the security measures were a violation of the status quo, and there was a significant escalation in violence since then, including on Friday the murders of 3 members of the same family in the West Bank Jewish settlement of Halamish, and then Sunday night at the Israeli embassy in Amman, Jordan, a 17-year-old Jordanian stabbed an Israeli security guard with a screwdriver. The guard, in response, shot and killed the terrorist. A second Jordanian man was also killed, hit by a stray bullet. The Jordanians demanded to question the guard, but Israel maintained that he had diplomatic immunity and vowed to bring him and the rest of the Israeli embassy staff home, which Israel successfully did late last night. And overnight last night, the metal detectors that Israel had installed at the Temple Mount were removed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met this morning with the returned security officer as well as with Israel's ambassador to Jordan, Einat Schlein, in Jerusalem, welcoming them home. Earlier last night, Netanyahu spoke over the phone to Jordan's King Abdullah II to try and resolve the situation. Meanwhile, there were still protests this morning outside the Temple Mount over reports that Israel would install smart cameras instead of the metal detectors, with some Muslim worshippers claiming that they would be X-ray cameras that would invade the privacy, in particular, of women. Israel police denied this, saying that all security measures are, quote, done while maintaining full respect for the public and its privacy. And U.S. Special Envoy Jason Greenblatt had flown back to Israel yesterday in an effort to help with the crisis with Jordan. And today, the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, addressed the Knesset caucus on U.S.-Israel relations about those efforts.
We had a situation in Jordan which was potentially something that could have gone very bad, and with no fanfare, but a lot of hard work and behind-the-scenes discussions by the senior officials in the United States, and of course with the Prime Minister and with the King of Jordan, we were able to diffuse very quickly a situation that obviously under other circumstances could have not ended as successfully. So our governments are joined at the hip in many respects and work very closely together to achieve what's in our collective interests.
And Mark Golub will have more on the situation with Jordan coming up right after this newscast when he speaks with former director of the Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, Ephraim Halevi, on In the News. And in other news, Israeli Finance Minister Moshe Kahalon is visiting the U.S. this week. Kahalon met yesterday with U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin in Washington, where the two spoke of enhancing economic cooperation and partnership. Kahalon also asked his counterpart to put pressure on the Palestinian Authority regarding their payments to the families of terrorists. Well, an Israeli play that was the target of the BDS, Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement that seeks to delegitimize the state of Israel, opened last night in New York City despite calls to cancel it. If you recall, we reported to you at the beginning of the month that about 70 artists, part of a group called Adalah New York, called on Lincoln Center to cancel the play To the End of the Land. It is performed by 2 Israeli theater companies based on a novel written by award-winning David Grossman, who happens to be a critic of the Netanyahu government. Nonetheless, the protesters said the theater was helping the Israeli government by allowing the play to take part in the Lincoln Center Festival. Lincoln Center President Deborah Spar rejected the request. She said, as a cultural and education organization, we do not make political statements and hope that the art we present can stand on its own. And while police were prepared for any incidents at the play's opening last night, there were none to speak of. And taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Tuesday, July the 25th. At 7 o'clock, Professor Tzvi Gittelman addresses the 2017 Limud Conference. At 8, more from the 2017 American Jewish Committee Global Forum, as Rabbi Angela Buchdal of Central Synagogue, Yehuda Kurtzer of the Shalom Hartman Institute North America, and Rabbi Dov Lipman of WZO address the question of whether Israel and the diaspora are drifting apart. That's with the AJC's Stephen Boehm. At 9 tonight, Mark Golub sits down with Rabbis Uri Regev and Mitchell Wahlberg on L'chaim. And coming up right after this newscast, Mark Golub speaks to former Mossad director Ephraim Halevi, who was part of the efforts leading up to the peace agreement with Jordan in 1994, to discuss the current situation with Jordan on In the News. And that's the JBS News Update for Tuesday, July the 25th, 2017. I'm Teisha Bader.